Welcome. If you need some support, please check out my one-on-one and group coaching offerings at faithfullygrowing.com/offerings. Additionally, if you're finding this podcast helpful, consider making a tax-deductible donation to help keep IFS accessible to all. And you can do that at faithfullygrowing.com/donate. And finally, for more content, visit the website for 25 free guided IFS meditations. Welcome back to IFS Meditations and Insights. I'm Tim Fortescue, here to help foster spiritual wholeness and healing through an internal family systems lens. In this caring space, we aim to dive into self-discovery and inner knowledge. I truly believe that when we accept all parts of ourselves, we're able to experience deep love and to live more fully. I'm thankful to be part of your path and journey to inner peace and sacred connection. So settle in, open up your heart and mind, and let's begin another episode. Before I jump into our content, just want to ask you, how are your parts? And how have they been this week? I know that I noticed one of my firefighters, a kind of a funny story now, that last weekend I was at home with my twin daughters, and my wife had left doing errands and things for our older two kids. And I decided to go on a little adventure. And actually, I found out that this was a firefighter, one of my little parts that can tend to be reactive, that got a little too reactive and maybe was in more of an extreme role. But my wife left, and I asked the girls if they wanted to go on a little ride. And we live on a property here that has an old rugged road. Used to be a road, not a road now, especially not for minivans. And my firefighter found that out. But I said, why don't we drive down to where we have a little swing in the trees? I think the van can make it down there. And so I start down the path and realize later this was my firefighter kind of taking charge. And you've heard me talk about driving the bus. Well, he was driving the minivan this time, and we go down this path, and then I stop just to see how we're doing, if it's possible to back up, and the wheels just spin. And my girls are just smiling, having fun. Actually, my girls are about 7. It's probably about the age of my firefighter, who was having so much fun. So I decide, well, let's drive down the path a little more, see if we can gain some traction. Stopped again. Begin to back up or try to back up. The wheels just spun. And so 5 gallons of kitty litter later, multiple cardboard boxes under the tires, trying to gain some traction. I had to call a friend who came with his big truck and was able to pull me and my firefighter out. But after that event, there'd been times in my life where I would just say, oh, you're stupid, and I can't believe that you did that. But it gave me just a more solid relationship with my little firefighter that's probably around 7, and just talked with him and said, I probably should have stopped you with that. That probably wasn't the best thing, but you got us stuck, and I let you, but you're doing the best that you can. And was able to say, wow, you keep life fun. And man, this is going to be a good story to tell. I'm even going to tell it on the podcast. But maybe next time, let's talk about it a little bit more. And it's my responsibility to check in and to do that with you. But thanks for keeping life fun. And so I don't know if you've had experiences like that with your parts this week, but I encourage you to keep this idea, the multiplicity of the mind, with you. And be gentle with yourself, even when one of those little firefighters may get you stuck in the mud. So hopefully that was helpful. If you want a picture of my daughter just up in the front smiling so big while we were waiting on the friend to tow us out, send me an email, tim@faithfullygrowing.com, and I'd be glad to get it to you. But hope that was helpful. Stay curious, be gentle with yourself, even those firefighters that tend to make life interesting. So today I'm going to talk about unblending in internal family systems. And blending within the IFS process can be understood as the phenomenon in which the emotional states and fundamental beliefs of one aspect of a person's psyche become intermingled with those of another aspect or with the core self. This fusion can often result in heightened levels of distress and impulsive, sometimes destructive behaviors that stand in the way of the individual's access to their intrinsic sense of self. And such occurrences can significantly obstruct the pathway to recovery and growth, as the energy that emanates from the self is integral to our healing. The practice of unblending becomes an indispensable skill within the framework of the IFS model and the healing process. It entails a deliberate effort to distinguish and separate the overlapping parts from each other and from the self. I could have used a little more unblending in the case of getting stuck in the mud. Practitioners often use this method when you, the client, have a lot of self-energy and are working with your parts. They also use it after moments of direct access. That's when the therapist holds self-energy and talks to the parts directly. And so this is different from the inside approach, when I, as practitioner, am engaging with you in self-energy, knowing that you have enough self to engage with your parts. Direct access is when a practitioner like myself holds the self in the session when you're unable to unblend and speaks directly to your parts. And when a part is able to successfully unblend, it ushers in an opportunity to shift the focus onto the client's own self, thus providing the various internal parts with the liberty to decide for themselves how closely they want to interact with the client's self, who you are at your core or not. The practitioner's deep-rooted connection to their intrinsic self-energy plays a pivotal role in guiding the unblending process. It's of the utmost importance that they, or me, when I'm in session as a practitioner, maintain keen self-awareness to discern instances when their own internal parts might inadvertently interfere with the progress of healing. And developing the ability to recognize and effectively distance these internal elements as necessary is critical. And I find I have to do that all the time in session, is to just intrinsically ask my parts to soften back, because they can tend to try to take charge of the session. And I need to remind them that they play a part, but they can trust me. I'm older now, and I can bring that self-energy to the client. And as a result, that client is able to often access more self-energy. And our systems are capable of getting what they need and healing themselves if we can trust them and trust the process. One of the fundamental aims of unblending is to attain a clear distinction between the various parts of the psyche, as well as from the central self, or what you've called me the central self, or what you've heard me call being beloved, a deeply loved human being at the core. There are scenarios wherein a certain part may demonstrate resistance to the separation process, and under these conditions, pivoting towards direct access, or me as the practitioner holding the self energy and speaking directly, knowing that I'm speaking to parts, but realizing that you, the client, may be blended and to speak to your parts directly. And this is often helpful. The act of unblending is conducive to several therapeutic benefits. It facilitates the emergence of more strong self-energy, empowers the client self to assume a leadership position in the IFS parts work journey. It improves the understanding of the target part, the part that we're focused on in that moment without external influences. And it supports direct and unfettered dialogue between the self and its constituent parts. The decision for the practitioner or therapist to assist with the unblending process is often helpful in these specific situations. For instance, when a client encounters difficulty in engaging with a part through the lens of self-qualities, like those C words that we often talk about, or before reaching a consensus that encourages inner reflection. The process of unblending should be continued until there's ample presence of self-energy, a critical mass available to further the course of the healing and journey of engagement with our parts, addressing and soothing any interrupting parts and having them soften back, and addressing their potential reservation regarding the process of unblending along the way as necessary is key. To unblend with efficacy, practitioners are encouraged to first identify those parts that are reactive or pose obstacles. They should then prompt the client to request these parts to step back temporarily and assume the role of one witnessing or observing with a primary focus on the target part that seems to want or need attention the most in the present moment of our work. And if the other parts are able to soften back and withdraw to a peripheral position and adopt a stance of more curiosity and relaxation, and take a momentary break, then that can free up space for us to get to know one part at a time. And we let the parts that soften back know that they can have a voice too, but they may learn a lot by witnessing, and we all learn more if we can engage with one target part at a time, and they will have a chance. I've also found that it's helpful sometimes to ask my own parts, and know that you can do this in your own work too if you're not with a practitioner or a therapist, but have parts maybe go into a room that has a glass where they can see me, but there's a little bit of separation. Or sometimes maybe just go into a waiting room and we'll call them back in to help them unblend. But I encourage you to experiment with how to get some of those parts that may jump in and inhibit us getting to know those parts that may not have as much of a voice, and see where that goes. And go back to those parts that jumped in. First, thank them for their courage, but give them a voice at some point too, and they can be a target. And upon completion of unblending, it's important to verify with the client, if you're a practitioner, or just check in with yourself if you're doing this on your own, that the part in question has been successfully isolated or able to step back so that the target part can continue sharing in comfort. And as I had mentioned, an expression of gratitude toward the parts that cooperated with softening back or unblending, and letting them know that it took a lot of courage to do that, and we're not going to forget about them, is key too, and can help them soften. Stubborn parts that persist may require additional probing, and they may even need to become the new target or part of focus for a bit too before they're able to step back. And you can use inside or direct access techniques with this. And as the particular parts work session draws to a close, it's important to revisit the unblended part and ensure that they're still distinct and provide relevant updates to them. See what they witnessed and then update them on what happened if needed. But unblending is key to the IFS process. When we're blended with our parts and we don't have that critical mass of self-energy, or even just a drop of curiosity and compassion is all it takes sometimes. It can really kind of put a block into the healing process. So I encourage you to take time to unblend and see which parts are up, see who needs the most focus right now on your journey as you work with your parts. That wraps up another episode of IFS Meditations and Insights. If you found it useful, please share and leave a positive review to help others find the podcast. For more content, visit blog.faithfullygrowing.com for a free categorized list of meditations and insights. And as always, your thoughts on the podcast are welcome. Send me an email or send me your questions to tim@faithfullygrowing.com if you have them too. But thanks for being a part of this community. And remember to be compassionate with yourself and others. And I'm looking forward to our next time together. And until then, take care, stay curious, and do your best to embrace all the parts that you encounter on your journey.